Christe Chen was over the moon about starting her new life. She had a brand new husband, a gorgeous honeymoon in Fiji, and a future she couldn't wait to begin. But less than 2 days after landing on Turtle Island, everything came crashing down. So how did this dream trip turn into her worst nightmare? Let's get into the heartbreaking story of this honeymoon that ended in tragedy. This is Crime to Sleep. Memphis, Tennessee, the birthplace of blues, soul, and rock and roll. Home of Elvis Presley's Graceland, tasty barbecue, and the mighty Mississippi River. And this is where Christe Chen, 36, grew up after her family moved from China. She was an only child and came from a well-off family and often traveled with her parents. Everyone who knew her described her as someone with an amazing work ethic, generous, sweet, fun, and kind of a quirky personality. She eventually moved to Denver, Colorado, where she became a pastry chef. She even had her own bakery called Sweet as Pie Bakery. How adorable is that? She was talented and people adored her work. But here's the thing. After building this really beloved little bakery, Christe decided to pivot. She went back to school to become a pharmacist. She enrolled at the University of Tennessee, and not only did she graduate, but she crushed it. She became an award-winning pharmacist. In 2021, she even won the Wolters Kluwer Clinical Drug Information Award for Excellence in Communication, and she got a grant to further research on social determinants of health in low-income areas. She wasn't just good at what she did. She was using her skills to help people who needed it most. Eventually, Christe took a job at a Kroger in Memphis as a pharmacist. She had so much going for her, and honestly, it's not surprising considering her determination and drive. Back in 2015 is when Christe first met Bradley Dawson at a friend's bachelorette party. But nothing really came of it back then. Fast forward 6 years later, in 2021, they crossed paths again in Memphis. By this time, Brad was 38 years old and working as an IT engineer for a nonprofit called Youth Villages. The organization focuses on helping kids and families who are struggling with emotional and behavioral challenges. Friends of Christe believe that what really brought the two of them closer was their shared love of running and giving back through charity work. On the surface, it looked like a perfect match, but knowing what we know now about him, it's honestly sickening to think he had that kind of role. Like, how do you go from doing meaningful nonprofit work to what he eventually did? It just doesn't add up. Their relationship moved fast, like whirlwind fast. And within just 3 months of knowing each other, they got married. But here's a red flag. Brad was literally still going through a divorce when he met Christe. That divorce was finalized in January 2022, and then by February 18th, he and Christe were married. Tell me that's not concerning. And honestly, it makes me wonder a lot about what happened with his first marriage. Their wedding was small, intimate, with just over 20 people in attendance. And the next day, they had a reception at this beautiful, historic inn, the James Lee House. That's where many of Christe's friends met Brad for the very first time. And of course, everyone just wanted her to be happy. From the outside, she seemed happy. She was glowing, excited, and looking forward to her honeymoon in July. It wasn't just the honeymoon she was looking forward to. She and Brad had just bought a $200,000 home in Memphis, and they were even talking about starting a family. But sadly, Christe never got the chance to do any of that. On July 7, 2022, Christe and Brad flew to Turtle Island in Fiji. And let me just say, if you've ever seen photos of this place, it looks unreal. Tucked away in the heart of the South Pacific, Turtle Island is a tiny, private paradise. Crystal clear turquoise waters, white sandy beaches, private bungalows, and lush tropical vibes make it the ultimate escape for luxury and privacy. It's the kind of place where you can forget the world and dream your perfect getaway. In fact, it served as the backdrop for the 1980s movie Blue Lagoon, starring Brooke Shields. Turtle Island itself is really small, just 500 acres, and it's exclusive. Only 14 couples are allowed at a time, and each couple gets their own bungalow. And when I say exclusive, I mean exclusive. The cheapest package is $2,500 a night. That's the basic package, by the way. If you're going higher end, you're spending twice that, and there's a 5-night minimum stay. So yeah, this was a serious luxury trip. They stayed at Bure 15, a $3,500 a night bungalow. On top of that, each couple gets their own concierge called a Bure Mama, who is basically there around the clock to make your honeymoon personalized and perfect. Reportedly, Christy's parents paid for the trip. They had actually been to Turtle Island before themselves, so this may have been their wedding gift to the couple. Which, I mean, what an incredible gift. But here's a strange little detail. Apparently, Brad had been to Fiji before. In fact, his first wedding was also in Fiji. And some reports even claim he stayed at the same resort with his ex-wife. And I don't know about you, but if I were Christy, I'd feel really weird about that. Maybe she didn't know. Maybe she did and didn't care. But still, that's just a detail you just can't stop thinking about. Anyway, at first, everything seemed fine. Christy was excited. They were settling into this once-in-a-lifetime trip. But less than 48 hours after arriving, everything would come crashing down. It was July 9th, the morning of their third day on the island. A hotel worker noticed something a little unusual. The couple didn't show up for breakfast. Now, on its own, that wasn't a big deal. Honeymooners sleeping in late, totally normal. But then, they missed lunch, and there was a do not disturb sign on their door. And that's when it started to feel strange. He finally went in after the manager told him to check on them. And that's when he found the lifeless body of Christy inside the blood-spattered bathroom, propped up against the toilet and the wall. She was covered with blood and shattered glass everywhere, and he also noticed a crack in the toilet lid. Her injuries were devastating. She had countless external wounds, her face so badly damaged it was nearly unrecognizable. The autopsy revealed severe swelling around both eyes and across her mouth. Her right arm was covered in bruises and cuts, and she had a large gaping wound on the back. Her cause of death was recorded as homicide by traumatic brain injury. It's horrifying to even picture the violence she must have gone through in those final moments. But as for Bradley, he has completely vanished. Police later learned that he grabbed his wallet, his passport, $1,000 in cash, his wife's license and credit card, and get this, he left behind his phone and smartwatch. Yeah, the two things that could track him. He likely planned to escape to Fiji's main island and then leave the country. But with no boats available that night, he turned to a kayak. Intoxicated and disoriented in the darkness, he unknowingly paddled the wrong way. He was found the next day on a village in a tiny neighboring island called Matakoaluvu, less than a mile from Turtle Island. And here's the thing. This wasn't some tourist hotspot. No resorts, no outsiders. So the second he showed up, he stuck out. A local man spotted him, stumbling toward the village at around 3 p.m. Brad was drunk, reeked of alcohol, covered with bruises and cuts. Over and over again, he kept mumbling, "We had a fight. I need to call the police." Police quickly tracked him down, brought him back, and charged him with Christy's murder. So what actually happened that night? On July 8th, the resort hosted a family fun night. Guests, staff, everyone partying together on the beach. At first it was great. Music, drinks, dancing. But then Brad starts dancing inappropriately with another woman. Christy was clearly upset. Who wouldn't be? They eventually left, still fighting. First on the beach, then back at their private bungalow. Around midnight, 12:40 a.m. on July 9th, a witness staying in the cottage next door testified that he heard loud banging and screaming coming from their cottage, followed by sudden silence. The neighbor even reported the disturbance to staff, but no action was taken. A few hours later, security spotted Brad pacing the island, and then he grabbed a kayak and paddled away around 2 a.m. According to a transcript of his police interview, Brad said that he argued with Christy about his ex-wife at dinner before they went back to the cottage drunk. "We then went to bed, and I turned to her to hug and cuddle. Then she got angry and started to say that I hurt her, and she does not know whether she wanted to be with me. Our argument moved towards where the toilet was, and that was when Christy pushed me, and that was when I lost it. He told them the toilet and window both broke in the scuffle and that he left and came back. She hadn't moved, so he grabbed a kayak and paddled off into the night. Instead of calling for help, he left. Of course, later he backtracked, saying she was still alive when he left, which honestly makes him look even worse, because if that were true, she could have been saved. Meanwhile, back in the US, Christy's parents got the call no parent ever wants. At first, they thought it was a prank. Their only child, gone, murdered by the very man who had just promised to love and protect her forever. They then flew to Fiji, and when they saw their daughter's body so badly beaten, so unrecognizable, they were completely shattered. The grief, the regret, the shock, they just broke down, crying uncontrollably. And as if that wasn't heartbreaking enough, the hospital told them that because of the extent of her injuries, it wouldn't be possible to preserve her body for transport. So they had no choice but to cremate her there in Fiji. They returned to the US carrying only her ashes. Christy's parents had gifted her this honeymoon. Imagine giving your only child the trip of her dreams only to lose her there. Truly heartbreaking. Christy's friends said they never heard her complain about fights with Brad. To them, he didn't seem like the type who could do something this awful. But the truth is, just because someone doesn't show a violent side, doesn't mean it isn't there. A lot of people hide those struggles. When reporters tracked down Brad's ex-girlfriend, Kristen Baker, the real story started to unfold.
Ex-girlfriend Kristen Baker is speaking out about her relationship with Dawson after she says they began dating in 2005 when they were both undergrads at the University of Tennessee.
I fell madly in love, and it was definitely intense and fast.
But she claims Dawson could sometimes be jealous and controlling, and that on one occasion he pushed her.
When I really did want to leave him, he did push me down once on the bed and chased me. He was very verbally manipulative and threatening and jealous.
Baker says she and Dawson broke up for good a year later, Dawson marrying another woman in 2019. Documents obtained by ABC News show that marriage ended in divorce, which was finalized this past January, 1 month before Dawson married Christe Chen, whom he's now accused of killing.
Unfortunately, the pattern repeated. Christy's whirlwind romance mirrored Kristen's experience, but she didn't escape. Unlike Kristen, she got caught in a tragic ending. Then there's the drinking. People said Brad had a pattern of blacking out and doing things he wouldn't even remember. And the night Christy died, they'd been drinking. But blackout or not, there's no excuse. Brad alone is responsible for her death. Brad's defense team tried everything, claimed it was an accident, that he panicked, that he fled because he was in shock. They even pulled the "poor Brad's mom depends on him" card. I mean, seriously. Although Brad pleaded not guilty, he declined to testify in his own defense and called no witnesses to the stand. Thankfully, the jury saw through all of it. Before sentencing, Christy's parents gave their statements. Her mom said, "I hope the memories of what you did to her in her last moments haunt you, because you are a monster." Her dad said, "She was my only child, my little girl, and my reason for living." On Tuesday, February 11th, 2025, after an 8-day bench trial, Bradley Dawson appeared at the Lautoka High Court in Suva, Fiji. The life sentence was mandatory, but he will be eligible for pardon after 18 years in prison. Justice Riaz Hamza told Brad at the sentencing, "Your conduct after the incident was appalling. What should have been a truly joyous and memorable vacation was turned into a nightmare for the deceased and her family, causing much pain and sorrow to them. Having inflicted serious and life-threatening injuries to the deceased, you fled the scene of the crime, leaving the deceased alone and helpless in your room. Her body was discovered several hours later." Christy had her whole life ahead of her. Plans for a new home, a family, a future she never got to live. And all of it was stolen just days after her wedding by the person who was supposed to protect her. And so another story comes to a close, a reminder that behind the charm, there can be shadows we never see until it's too late. That's all for today. Thank you for watching.